So many cars, yet so few plugs. Welcome to the Urban EV Podcast, where we speak to industry leaders and EV owners with boots on the ground to read the tea leaves on the direction of the green energy revolution. I'm your host, Rob Hoffman.
And I'm Scott Murphy.
Today, we're heading to the intersection of classic car design and cutting-edge technology with someone who's reinventing nostalgia on four wheels. Gary White is the co-founder of Sebring Works, a UK-based company that models classic-style roadsters into electric head turners. But before Gary was building EVs, he was building IT solutions. We're going to talk to him about how that background helped him rethink automotive performance, what Sebring's unique EV platform brings to the table, and what it all means for the future of classic motoring. Gary, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Great to be on it. Thank you for inviting me.
Gary, why don't you just share your background with us and how you got to where you are today with Sebring Works?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So my wife and I have been car nuts all our lives. And, we live in the UK. And when the sun shines in the UK, which is not that frequently, we love to get the classic car out and go for a drive. But the number of times we went and the thing wouldn't start or the battery was flat, and it was just so frustrating. So there was a program on the Discovery Channel that covered a vehicle conversion company in Wales called Electric Classic Cars. And we thought the electrification of one of our classics is probably the route we would go down.
And this is one of your personal cars in your garage?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So we went to a conversion business and they quoted us quite a significant amount of money, which is probably about 10 times what the car was worth. But there was also quite a significant lead time, getting close to 2 years for a lead time to get your car done. So both my wife and I have been fairly entrepreneurial all our lives. And we thought if there's a 2-year lead time on these cars, and there's obviously something happening in the industry. So we managed to find a high voltage automotive engineer, and we set about to convert one of our own cars to see how we get on. And that led us into the conversion business. So we started off converting classic cars to electric drivetrains. But what we discovered was that we certainly solved the reliability issue, but you still had a car that was 40, 50 years old, and it rattled and banged, and the braking technology and suspension was all designed many, many moons ago. And for us, that's not where we wanted to be. So we decided that we would start from scratch. And there was actually a kit car company that originated actually in Florida, in Sebring. It was 40 years old, and it ended up in the UK. So we acquired that business, and we set about building from the ground up an electric sports car that looked like cars from the 60s and 50s. Okay. So that's kind of where we started. So we designed a electric skateboard chassis, and then we had the molds to build fiberglass bodies to put at that point an Austin Healy 3000 replica on that skateboard platform. That's kind of how we got into it.
The development started with the platform first, right? Is that basically how the process went? And then essentially, once you built the skateboard, I guess adding the car on top, there's the next challenge. So is this a chicken and egg thing? Is your platform, does it work with other types of body styles? And what styles are you using right now?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say we planned it this way. I would say we started off building that first replica from the Sebring International company that we acquired. And as we were going through it, we realized, well, actually, this skateboard platform that we're designing shouldn't just be limited to that one body shape. It could fit other body shapes as well. So look at where we are right now. We support 3 different body shapes, cars from the 50s and 60s, but we've got plans to put other bodies on that chassis as the company grows and expands. And it's an interesting place to be because, I'm of an older generation. So if you say to me, what's your favorite classic car? Then I might think about an Austin Healy or an MGB or something like that, kind of British based. But if you ask our son, who's pushing 30 now, what his classic car would be, it'll be a car from his era. So classic car for him is something different.
It'll be like a Lamborghini Countach or something like along those lines, which is kind of like my generation. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we see the company growing, the bodies that we put on that chassis may well change as demand comes from a younger generation to replicate the classics that they remember.
So, Gary, let's just dial it back for a second, though. So you have a background in IT, right? I mean, this seems like a very bold move. Obviously, what was the car that you converted? What was that original test bed that you were doing the true resto mod on?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd class it as a bold move. It was a move based on enthusiasm and a hope that when we got to the end, that we'd actually have something that people would buy. I think we've now proved that point, but at the time, it was like lots of people, you have a hunch that there's something out there, and you kind of build to that hunch. So that's really what started. But what was interesting, there was we have one other competitor, again, it was a British company, who are now out in the US, and they've been kind of paving the way. They have proved that there is demand for brand new electric sports cars that look like cars from the 50s and 60s. So they were really kind of plowing a furrow, and that kind of gave us the confidence that we weren't just building a company based on enthusiasm. There was actually demand for the products out there.
So, what was the vehicle, your personal vehicle, that you converted to start this whole process off?
It was an MGB GT.
Which is a wonderful car. It's gorgeous, and I know for those that own it here in the US, if you don't know how to turn a wrench, you're insane to consider getting one, and the
Yeah,
price barrier is pretty low these days to buy
yeah.
one, but it's owning it, that's where they're gonna get you. And sure, there's the risk of being stranded wherever you go. You don't wanna go too far of a radius away from your home.
Yeah.
Did you end up completing that resto mod to EV? Did you complete that process?
Yeah, we completed that project, and, it was interesting. The first time we drove that car when we'd kind of finished it, was that you could suddenly have a conversation with the passenger because you
Yeah.
weren't drowned out by engine noise. But what was really obvious was this thing rattled and banged, and you then heard it all because it wasn't drowned out by the engine noise. So it was quite an eye opener for us, and like I say, it solved some of the issues that we had with classic cars, but it didn't solve the whole thing. And the other thing about these, look, there's some really, really great companies out there that are converting classic cars to electric drivetrains. They're doing amazing jobs, but it's always a compromise in so much as you're always trying to physically fit battery packs into predefined spaces. So you're always going to have a compromise on how much kilowatt hours you can get in the car, how much power you can put in it, all that kind of good stuff. Whereas building an electric retro car from the ground up, you don't have those restrictions.
So, just out of curiosity, so you basically took that concept. You said, "Okay, I'm going to put this by the wayside right now. I'm going to pivot. We're going to build our own original platform." And obviously, you build that with a resto mod in mind, a classic car sort of dimensions, right? Did you build that platform specifically to be able to be modified for the changing sort of shells that you'd be putting on top of it?
Yeah, so again, the platform we've got, essentially, if you imagine the kind of four corners of that platform, it's all off the shelf OEM parts. So again, we took this decision. There's no point in us trying to design a unique suspension system where some of the big manufacturers have put a hell of a lot more into it than we can. So we put off the shelf components on all four corners in terms of braking and suspension. The center of the car, where the battery pack fits under the floor, again, we're using the same dimensions of a battery pack in all the models we've got, but we can lengthen the chassis and we can narrow it to a degree. So really, we're looking at body shells that will fit on an extended version of that center section, and that is most of them. So it's right now we're focusing very much on two-door sports cars that fit on those dimensions, and they're all very, cars from that era. They're not fundamentally different in size, so we have to maybe tweak it slightly depending on the body shell that goes on it. But essentially, what we were trying to do in order to allow us to scale it was to not custom build every single chassis for a particular body type, which is why I've got a standard chassis.
Now, those cars from yesteryear, their performance compared to a modern car, it pales in comparison, right? They're much more, I mean, today anyway, anyone that really owns one, it's a Sunday driver, right? Is the goal of your cars to be true performance vehicles to perform better than what the original did, or are they Sunday drivers as well?
No, they're so I would say in terms of defining performance. So if you look at there's a replica of a Porsche 356. The sort of people that like those kind of vehicles are not looking for high performance. They're looking for something that's reliable and kind of port around on a sunny day. Okay. Whereas we have a project right now, which is a high performance Cobra replica, and the people that drive those want performance. They also want noise, which is an interesting thing as well. So we always struggle with the noise bit. maybe that's another topic to come to a bit later on. But essentially, for us, the platform, it's the same components, but we either open it up or close it down, depending on the shape of body we've got on it and what the customer wants to do with it.
Well, it's funny. You just mentioned the noise. I was just at the New York International Auto Show. I did a whole nother podcast on it. Overall, it was a disappointment because there was nothing innovative over there except for one thing, which they actually opened up because it's indoors, an EV test track for the visitors to come and test out their favorite cars over there. And they had a massive selection, and it was terrific. People were tearing it up. And the one thing I've read about this car, and it's the first time I actually experienced it in real life, sitting right next to it. The Dodge Charger has this concept, they call it franzonic. I don't know if that's a
Yeah,
made up word or not. It's basically speakers
it's
situated where the
ridiculous.
tailpipe would be, making a lot of grumbling noise when you step on
Yeah.
the accelerator. I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, it's
Is that
really
something that you would be
interesting
doing with the
'cause,
AC Cobra as well?
well, so we've wrestled with this, and it's predominantly lots of customers who've asked us, can you? Well, it kind of starts off with, is there any noise to this electric vehicle? And yes, we have some road noise. There's some legislation, certainly in Europe, around minimum noise levels and things like that, but it's all artificially. But we have the ability to make it sound like a V8 if you wanted. But internally we've struggled with it because it's a bit like kind of vegan bacon. It doesn't quite
Yeah,
fit
yeah.
right if you're a meat eater.
That's a perfect way of putting it, by the way. Sorry, that
Yeah.
analogy is perfect.
Yeah, vegan bacon and petrol air fresheners. That's the two things that we refer
Yeah,
to
it's
a
like,
lot. So,
kidding me?
if you want that in the car. So we do have a fun pack, which is artificially generated noise, and you've got an app that you can make it sound like a V8 if you want. And some customers like it, and some others don't. But I think it's really interesting place because we all associate speed with noise, and when you don't have that noise, it just sounds a bit disconcerting. So we have that capability, very much a customer requirement if they want to implement it.
Well, I guess there's a fine line here because you're making a play on British heritage and craftsmanship and the legendary cars which you're basing your vehicles on. They hit a lot of notes which, in a certain
Yeah,
way, an EV can't do anymore.
yeah.
So this is one of those things here where I guess this is how you're navigating it, right? It's there are no easy answers here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of gas-powered cars nowadays have artificial noise. It's not noise that's generated by the mechanics, you know? So,
I didn't realize they were doing that as well. All right. Well, if
yeah,
they can do it, I
yeah,
guess we
there's
can do
there's
it
quite
too,
a lot
right?
of gas production cars that the noise that they emit is artificial. It's a sound box.
Interesting.
That's
Interesting. All right.
wild.
All right. So let's talk about Sebring a little. They're a bit of a storied brand as well. Did you purchase their IP? What did they bring to the table by acquiring them?
Yeah, so we acquired their IP, which essentially was the use of the name. So like I say, it goes back 40 years to Sebring Racetrack down in Florida. At that point, it was called Classic Roadsters, and they started up replicating some old MGs. And then series of events ended up in the UK. So we acquired the rights to use the name. Equally important for us, the molds for the bodies, Austin Healy 3000 replicas. So that's essentially what we acquired.
All right. So it's the mold making. That's actually the secret sauce that they brought to the table. And you said
Yeah, and
it's fiberglass molds that you use?
yeah, so we have our own composites business. We've got Sebring Composites, and we build our own bodies. They are, fiberglass. Fiberglass still, I think, brings some memories from kit cars from the 80s, but the fiberglass technology now is much more advanced. There's some carbon fiber elements to it that we can insert, but yeah, the bodies we build are composite bodies. So we have the molds for, Porsche 356 replica, coupe, Porsche 356 coupe, Austin Healy 3000, AC Cobra, and a few others that we're looking to acquire as well. So,
And so where are you selling your wares right now? Are you strictly UK or are you selling internationally? Are you doing right-hand drive, left-hand drive, or both?
yeah, so we do both right and left-hand drive. We've sold in the UK so far. We've also got customers in the US. So we're currently in discussions to open a facility up in the US. Haven't nailed down exactly where that's going to be, but it's likely to be East Coast. So we see the US market as quite significant, and we've got backing in the US now to bring the whole US operations to life. So it's an active project for us right now.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, while we're on the subject of you potentially opening up something here in the U.S., are the tariffs hanging over everyone's head? Is that a factor in your decision making?
It's certainly complicated it. It's played with the financials a little bit. We're hoping that those tariffs will settle down, and at the moment, we are gonna manufacture in the UK. So at the moment, we're manufacturing, kind of 1 car a week, but
Mm.
we've got the capacity to build up to 200 a year at the moment. But at some point, the economics will suggest that we would open up manufacturing in the US. And we're an assembly business, so we outsource all the physical manufacturing to third parties, and then we pull it in-house and assemble it. So in terms of tariffs, it doesn't really matter if we're assembling it here and shipping it across the US and paying 10%, or we're based in the US and pulling in components from overseas, because you're still gonna pay the tariffs on that as well. It doesn't really make much difference at this moment in time, but yeah, we've always got our eye on how some of the economics might affect us.
So, shifting gears here, metaphorically anyway, once again, getting back to the performance of the vehicles with or without the manufactured sound, what are the specs, battery,
Yeah,
range, speed, all that good stuff?
yeah. So 55 kilowatt hour battery pack on the what we call a speedster. So we restrict the miles per hour to 100. We restrict it not to 60 in just sub 6 seconds. But again, on the Cobra replica that we're building out right now, exact same platform, but we open it up, and you're talking about top speed of 150 and not to 60 in sub 3 seconds.
Nice.
But
All right.
again, all on the same platform, and it's just a piece of software that we open up or throttle down, which is why we can scale. It's easy to scale and easy to put new models out.
Is there any chance that you're going to do a pivot and develop your own original model? Or is this niche? I mean, it seems like you're in a great space. And if it's working and you're expanding, obviously you're doing something right. But any vision of possibly developing your own unique platform top to bottom?
I would say we'd never say never, but right now, what we don't have to do is sell the shape of the vehicle because they're all recognizable. Whereas if you've devised your own model and your own shape, you have to kind of convince people that the shape's nice. So we don't have to sell the shapes because they're instantly recognizable. The other thing is interesting how people purchase these vehicles. It's an emotional purchase. We very rarely get the technical questions about the vehicle. There's the kind of the basic stuff like range and things like that. But it's people buy it on the basis of, my father had one when I was a child, or it was the first car I ever had. That's the basis of people. It's how they feel driving the car, which is what drives ownership as opposed to anything else.
So that's a perfect segue into my first question, which is what has the response been from classic car enthusiasts in particular, particularly to kind of it's a replica that's electric.
So like I say, when we started off in the conversion world, and I can remember that was 3 years ago. I can remember the first show we went to where we had our MGB converted, and we had MGB enthusiasts shouting at us about how dare we do what we've done. But I think 3 years ago, particularly in that classic car world, people's views are a lot different now than they were. So I would say, in terms of conversions, people are probably more understanding of it. But where we're in, because we are brand new cars, what you're seeing is people realizing the practicalities of them. So you can use the car that looks like some of the 50s. You can use it every day because it's electric and all the benefits that gives you. So we don't really get much resistance. You'll always get resistance from the enthusiasts that own the originals. But I think a lot of them, and I think it's an interesting point because an awful lot of these cars never get used. The original ones never get used. They sit most of their time for whatever reason, whereas ours are designed to be used. And I think that's a big kind of challenge for us is getting across that don't compare it with what this thing looks like from 40 years ago. This is a modern car, and it drives like a modern car and handles like a modern car. Just happens to look like something from the past.
Kind of to that point about it drives like a modern car, it feels like a modern car. How do you balance that with kind of maintaining the authenticity and the feel of that vintage car while delivering a safer, probably much more reliable platform?
Yeah. So we're not trying to replicate the feel. That's actually what we're trying to get away from. We're actually trying to get something that is really interesting. So there was a lady that we knew, sorry, a gentleman who bought a petrol replica for his wife of a Porsche
Mm.
356, and his wife drives a Mercedes G-Wagon. So she jumped from the G-Wagon into this petrol Porsche 356 replica and
Yeah.
absolutely hated it for all the reasons that you're probably well aware. We solved that problem because she can jump from her G-Wagon into the electric car, and it drives like she expects cars to drive, which is point and go essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
And for these type of cars, you're not looking for the performance that you might do in others. So, but for us, that's a bit of a marketing challenge just to get that across.
Gary, this reminds me. So I grew up on Long Island. We got Long Island Sound. We got the Atlantic Ocean. It's a marine environment. So there are a lot of motorboats over there, and maybe you're familiar with this in UK. This saying. Certainly, everyone around here knows what are the two best days in a boat owner's life: the day they bought it and the day they sold it. You know,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
because it's nothing but problems, and it's just like one financial crisis after the next, getting stranded, all of that stuff that happens with boats. And I'm sure the analogy between a motorboat in a marine environment and the classic cars is the same thing here, that every time you have to sort of strategize, every time you think that maybe I'm going to put the key in the car here and take it for a
Yeah.
ride, like, where am I going? Can I get rescued if this thing breaks down? Am I time constrained? All of this stuff here. Is it going to rain? This thing here, like, kind of cancels so many of those missions, and in the end, the car just sits. And this is what's wonderful here, that your cars are designed to be driven every day and still have, I'm going to borrow some from the aviation world. They got the
Yeah.
ramp appeal.
Yeah.
They're still head turners.
Yeah. And I think there's a number of, or maybe there's a generational thing here, that there are people that won't buy classic cars for the reasons you've just given. So they'll never become classic car owners. But what this allows us to do is give them that classic car experience and the confidence that it is going to start. So we feel there's probably an audience out there that currently is untapped for the reasons I've just given. Given that these cars that we build do spend quite a lot of time in garages, is that we have got vehicle to home charging in the vehicles.
Oh, wow.
I was not expecting to hear that from you. That's a very advanced technology.
Yeah, so rather than buy a Tesla Powerwall, you might as well just use the vehicle that's sitting there with 55 kilowatt hours.
So, in as far as the design of the vehicle, I know having the vehicle to home, the V2H, feed the grid, you've got to build in some inverters into the car. That makes, I guess, a little more expensive and complicated, right? Why did you go down that rabbit hole to incorporate that into your design?
Because I think there's a journey that electric car owners go through, and we certainly did that as well. So I had a software business for 20 odd years, and we leased cars through that business. And this was just prior to COVID. The lease was up on the last car, so we went looking for a car. Now, in the UK, there was massive tax breaks on electric vehicles, so we leased a Porsche Taycan as our first electric vehicle, and we're just blown away by it, absolutely blown away by it. But what it did to us, and this is not dissimilar to lots of people when they get electric cars. When you get an electric car, then you start looking at your home energy solutions. Then you start looking at this and starting at that. So I ended up, changing all my garden power tools to battery from gas, all that kind of stuff. And as part of that process you go through, so we were looking, take our home off grid, and I'm sitting thinking, well, I've got a 55 kilowatt battery pack sitting in the garage doing nothing, so why can't I use it? So that was the logic that got me there. And in terms of the technology to put in the car, it's not material in the scheme of things. Obviously, there's some kit you need to have in your house to deal with it, but for us, it was just that this is where the customers will probably end up. So why not try and get ahead of the curve on this and put it into the cars? But you're seeing this stuff in production cars as well. In fact, was that not the reason why the F-150 Lightning sold so many? Was on the last 5 seconds of the advert, which was when all the power went out and they plugged the car in the pickup truck to run the house again. That's what sold so many of them. So
Mm-hmm.
people start thinking that way now.
No
Super
question
cool.
about it. for so many people that live in the country here to have that ability to have their car actually provide power to the home as a backup. It's an amazing solution that is going to speak to a lot of people. I know some of the challenges, though, is what does it take to convert your home to accept that power?
Yeah.
Ironically, the Cybertruck, which is considered such a sales flop right now, they build a lot more of that technology into the truck itself, so you don't have to do a behind-the-wall conversion of your home. It's much
Right.
simpler to turn
Okay.
it to a vehicle-to-home solution. I'm assuming with your vehicle, the inverters need to be built into your home as well, right? You have to do some conversion, behind the panel where you plug into,
Yeah.
correct?
So it's an interesting point because we know we're kind of version one of the vehicle to home thing, but
Hmm.
I did not know that about the Cybertruck. So for us, that makes more sense to try and move that technology more into the car. Therefore, there's less burden on the homeowner to try and figure out at their end. So
But I think to me, the interesting thing about that is like if you're inclined to want to have a backup power solution for your house anyway, it's highly likely that you've probably had some kind of natural gas generator or something like that, where you're used to having to integrate additional technology into your electric infrastructure in your house anyway. So you're going to have automatic transfer switches and all that kind of stuff. So I think, yeah, Rob, like, sure, there's an extra step. But I think to your point, like, if you're talking about rural or suburban homes that are implementing backup electric technology anyway, the fact, and more to Gary's point, like, I've got this giant battery that's already full of energy. I don't need to put a natural gas line in. I don't need to deal with any of that. I have the power here. I'm literally just making a few modifications, which are, I believe, relatively inexpensive compared to other solutions. It's fairly straightforward.
I think in the end, it's one of those things where, Gary, you mentioned here the emotional resonance that your vehicles have, and that's what drives people to purchase them. And I think that's what many cars out there. There are a lot of people that put on their rational caps and go, I need X, Y, and Z, and that's why I'm buying a car, and I don't care. It doesn't need to be cool or sexy. It's just a tool. But so many people, especially in the luxury performance car space, it is such an irrational, emotional purchase. But ironically, for many consumers, just throwing another $2,000 bill and, oh, I got to rip out my wall and bring an electrician in here, like, that's a bridge too far, even if I just spent $50,000 on this new vehicle. So I feel like the less friction there is, the more apt they are to actually go through the process and actually, because in the end, right, the backup batteries, it's a backup. I don't need it right now. Maybe I'll never need it, right?
well,
So
and again,
that's the big thing
I'm not
there.
familiar with. I lived in the US for a few years, kind of New Hampshire area, but that was a long 20 years ago, so I've kind of forgotten how things work. But in the UK, we have got cheap tariffs during the night, and they're like 20% of the daily tariff. So this idea that you basically charge your battery up during the night when the tariffs are low, and then discharge it during the day when the tariffs are high. So yes,
Hmm.
it could be a backup battery in an emergency, but it could also be a daily thing that you cycle through, and there's a cost saving there. So with my kind of accountant's hat on, you can kind of work that back into the price of the car to say, okay, you're paying X for the car, but you're actually going to get a return back because you've got this as part of your energy solution.
There's legit ROI on it in the
Yeah,
UK. All right, that
yeah,
makes even more sense.
yeah.
Okay, but that
That's
leads
wild.
me to my next question, Gary. What is this going to set me back? What's your most popular model, and how much is it going to cost?
Yeah, so I'll do this in dollar terms. So they're about $143,000, including the sales tax, depending what state you're in. Okay, and that's delivered to your door.
Awesome. It's a luxury vehicle, but at the same time, listen,
No, no,
compared to
that's
the
that's
other
less than I
performance vehicles
expected.
out there, obviously you're in play. You've got an audience out there.
Yeah,
Well, for sure. I'm sure you have a waiting list.
yeah. So we've about just shy of 40 cars in the build queue at the moment, and things are ramping up pretty quickly. So we've been at it for 3 years. It's been a journey. You know,
I'm sure.
it's been an emotional journey as well as a financial one. But I think for us, where we are now, we feel very comfortable because we've now got we're certainly gathering more pace on the marketing side. So rather than us going out with cap in hand, pleading for some attention, we've now got people coming to us asking for events like this, which is great. But you've also got the order book filling up as well, which just demonstrates that you've got the right product and you've got the right price point as well.
One more question here, but Gary, you do have experience in the IT space. Did that help you at all, or did that pave a path for where you are today in developing these EV platforms? Or is that completely ancillary? The fact that you worked with electronics before and you're doing it now, two fully separate businesses, one has nothing to do with the other.
So I would say, so my wife and I were both in partnership with the Sebring Works, and we both had a software company for 20 odd years, and we've had other business as well, marketing agency and things like that. We are not technical people in respect of software or in terms of electric vehicles, but we run businesses. So we've got a pretty good understanding of what's going on, but we're not deep technical. So the similarities between the software company and this one is the ability to build a business that's profitable with products that companies love. We do have a software platform that we have devised that sits on top of the cars and monitors location, monitors fault finding, over the air updates and things like that. So there is a software component in the midst of all this. But at the moment, it's more about understanding how the cars are being used. So are they indeed sitting in a garage for 95% of their life, or are they out in the road, and how long are the journeys? And so it's providing data for us to then feed back into the product.
Okay, Gary. So, kind of towards the end of most episodes, we like to throw a few kind of curveball questions, maybe not necessarily entirely related to what you're doing, but let's go the first one. What car do you have in your garage right now?
I'm embarrassed to admit it that I've got a Ford Ranger pickup diesel, but that's purely because we're hauling car trailers around, and as yet, I would love to have a Ford 150 Lightning across here. Way too big for our roads. Okay,
Yeah, no, there's
and
no
then
way.
and the other cars we got is we drive around our own demo cars.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know,
By the way, you're the second Brit who has said that they would really like the Ford F-150 Lightning, but it would never fit on the roads. Okay, so
yeah,
next question for me. Favorite classic car of all time?
Austin Healy 3000, without a doubt.
Awesome. Rob.
All right. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I don't know which one's the 3000. Which one's sitting right behind you right now?
That one, that's a Healy 3000. So if I move
There
this,
you go.
I won't move
Well,
it. But yeah.
Gary, I know that's an Austin Healy. I didn't realize that was the 3000 because I'm more well versed in American cars. But that is a gorgeous, stunner, head turner. And yeah, if I could put something on my wish list, yeah, the Lamborghini Countach would be
Wow,
the ultimate
beautiful.
car that I dreamt about. I had a poster on the wall. So yeah, that would be my dream car. Scott,
Fantastic.
do you want to add one to the wish list here that's never going to happen?
Well, Rob knows I hate cars. No, I don't hate cars, but
It's going to be a
let's see.
bicycle.
Yeah, it's going to be an electric bicycle. No, my favorite car. You know what? I think it would be the Alfa Romeo Alfetta. It would still be, my first car was an Alfa Romeo Alfetta, and it was an absolute nightmare. I won't go into the story again because I've told it too many times. But if you could make that reliable and regular, able to drive on a regular basis, not the one time I took it from when I bought it back to my house, that would be my pick.
All right. Last but not least, you're 3 years in right now. So Sebring Works, I'd say you're starting to become a mature company. I don't know if you still consider yourself a startup right now, but you're certainly transitioning into sort of the next phase. But do you have any advice for other tech entrepreneurs to enter the EV or automotive space?
Don't do it. Would probably be my. No. It's no. I think I think the frustration I've had is just things take longer than you anticipate. So not being an engineer, but having a bit of understanding. I just want things to move quicker, and when they don't move quicker, then it saps up resources. So like all these things is planning for us. It's the planning process rather than the plan itself that's the benefit, and just keep on top of cash flow, all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, if you've got that entrepreneurial spirit, you got to give it a go. But it's not for the faint-hearted.
No, I'm sure it's pretty capital intensive as well, I assume. So deep
Yeah.
pockets or being well funded probably helps.
Yeah, definitely.
Wonderful. All right. Well, that just about does it for today's show. Gary, thank you so much for being a part of it.
Pleasure.
Can you share with the audience where they can either find you or Sebring online
Yeah.
to get more information?
Sebring-works.com. That's the best place to start.
All right, wonderful. And I know you're active on LinkedIn, so you can look Gary up on LinkedIn as well and find him over there. He's got an active channel. That just about does it for today's show. From spreadsheets to speedometers, Gary White has shown us how software thinking and classic car passion can charge the future of driving. Whether you're a diehard motorhead or petrolhead, I guess as you would say in the UK, or a digital futurist, Sebring Works proves there's room for both elegance and innovation in the EV world. A reminder to follow us on LinkedIn, like and subscribe to this channel, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Your review or feedback is always appreciated. Any subject you like covered, just shoot me a DM on LinkedIn, and we'll definitely consider it for a future episode. We will see you all next week with a new episode of the Urban EV Podcast.